Hello, everybody out there on the interwebs. My name is James Murua, and welcome to episode 43 of the Writing Africa podcast. Writing Africa is a project that celebrates writers of African descent, whether they're on the continent or in the diaspora. This week, our focus is on award-winning novelist from Senegal, Mohamed Mbougar Sarr. Enjoy. Please remember that you can support our project on Patreon, PayPal, Coffee or mobile money. And for all information on how to do this, please go to writingafrica.com/donate. We aren't just a podcast, of course. We also have a website that covers the African literary scene at writingafrica.com. Since our last episode, we have covered news about the Calabash International Literary Festival that will be happening in Jamaica. The Malawi Writers Union Short Story Prize, they've announced their jury. We've had winners for the Glenn Alushai Prize for African Poetry, GST Angola Camille Literary Prize, the Awele Creative Trust Short Story Award, and we've also had the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction. We've also had longlists for the Women's Prize, the Isele Awards, and the Jalak Prize, that's the UK prize, and shortlists for the Afritondo Short Story Prize, Canada's Griffin Poetry Prize, and the Evaristo Prize for African Poetry. In Brazil, the Prêmio Oceanos have also announced their first selections for their prize. So if you want to know what's been happening in African literature, please go to writingafrica.com. All the information is on there. Today, our focus is Mohamed Mbougar Sarr. He was born in Diourbel, Senegal in 1990, and he later moved to study literature and philosophy in Paris, France, and he currently lives in Paris. He was first noted in the African literary space with his short story La Calais. It's a short story about slave trade. He won the Prix Stéphane Hessel, and then later on in the year he gave us Terra Siente. That was published by Editions Présence Africaine. This novel describes life in a fictional Sahelian village under the control of Islamist jihadist militias. It was a very, very significant debut, for which he won the Prix Amadou Koroma. Amadou Koroma was a late writer who there's a prize in his honor that's handed out every year at the Geneva Book Fair. He won the prize that year. He also won Prix de Romain Matisse de Lycéen and Grand Prix de Romain Matisse. In 2021, our friends at Europa Editions gave us a translation of the book called Brotherhood. The translation was done by Alexia Trigo. In 2017, he gave us his sophomore offering, Silence de Show, also published by Présence Africaine. This was a portrait of the day-to-day life of African immigrants in Sicily. It won a couple of awards, mainly at the literary festivals. He got the Prix du Roman Métier de Lecteur in Les Réunions and Prix Le Tremont in Saint-Malo. This also has an English translation done by Europa Editions. They seem to really like this writer. It was done in 2024 by Alison Anderson, and the book is called The Silence of the Choir. His third offering, The Pure Homme, or Pure Man in English, that was done in 2018. That one deals with prejudice and violence surrounding homosexuality in Senegal, where it's still illegal to be openly gay. His 2021 novel, the fourth one, now that was the bombshell. It was called La plus secrète mémoire des hommes. It was published by Philippe Ray. I guess he had a different publisher for this. And in this novel, he talks about a young Senegalese writer named Diegane Faye living in Paris who discovers a 1938 novel by a fictional African author, T.C. Elimane, nicknamed the Black Rainbow, for which he won the Prix Goncourt. The Goncourt is the most significant prize for writing in French in the world today. He also got a special mention at the Prix Littéraire Fetkan Maurice Condé. The translation for this book, The Most Secret Memory of Men, by Lara Vernon, I've just finished reading this book in the last couple of days, and it's really good. Tolu Daniel, in his Olongo Africa review, describes Sarr's work as a political insistence on recognition. It's about resisting fixity or categorization. At the end of the novel, he leaves us with a world where ghosts are real, where the disappeared do not stay disappeared, and where literature remains a battleground for who gets to be remembered and who is consigned to oblivion. For me as a reader, I really enjoyed it. This book. He employs some of the techniques that I've seen other writers who write in French. Writers like Alain Mabankou and Fiston Mwanza Mujila. Very long sentences that force you to change the way you read. Because if they're very long sentences, you have to just think, okay, I need to pause. You just learn how to read differently. It's heavy on the internal dialogue. We are seeing what he's thinking. He's talking about what he's doing but doesn't do. A lot of that. We have sharp, crisp prose with humor elements. Characters that have been designed very masterfully, and they stick with you. I'm still thinking about Elimane as we speak, and of course Fire. These are very, very good character work. It's hands down the best book I've read in 2025. I'll show you this by reading something that stuck with me. It comes from one of the characters, Musimbwa, who is Fire's friend. He was his friend who wrote a letter to his friend in Paris, describing his traumatic experience as a child. In that letter, there's a monologue that writers of Africa need to look at on their role in the communities that they live in. And what is interesting about this is that these kind of thoughts don't usually appear in fiction, don't typically appear in fiction, typically appear in non-fiction essays in journals and those kind of spaces. Let's go. But all that disillusionment can teach us a lesson, Fire. Who was Elimane really? I don't know where your search has taken you these past few weeks, but I see one possible answer. Elimane was a person or thing we mustn't become, and that we are slowly becoming. He was a warning that fell on dark ears. That warning told us African writers, invent your own tradition, establish your own literary history, discover your own forms, test them in your spaces, nourish your deepest imagination, have a land of your own, for it's only there that you'll exist not only for yourselves but also for others. Who was Elimane really? The most accomplished and most tragic product of colonization. He was its most dazzling success, more so than the paved roads, the hospitals, the Sunday school, more so than the purebred and pureblood Gaul. Poor Jules Ferry. But Elimane also symbolized what the innate horror of that colonization had destroyed within the people subjugated to it. Elimane wanted to become white, and he was reminded that not only was he not, but that he never would be despite all of his talent. He brandished every card of whiteness, culturally at least. These were simply used as metaphors of his negritude. Maybe he understood Europe better than the Europeans. But how did he end up? Anonymous, disappeared, erased. You know this. Colonization sows despair, death, and chaos among the colonized. And this is its most diabolical triumph. The desire to become one's destroyer. That was Elimane, all the sadness of alienation. Ultimately, when you read this book, you understand why it won the Prix Goncourt, and this writer has become one of the most important ones working in the French language today. I recommend you, please, I implore you, please, go out and get this book and his other titles. You are going to have a good read.